Hello, welcome to Jack Knits, and today we're going to take our ordinary ribbing pattern and give it a little bit of a twist to make sure that it pops out and is a unique new ribbing you can do as an alternative to regular ribbing stitches. So let's take a look at what we can do to give our ribbing a little bit of pizzazz. Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today we're going to talk all about ribbing, some of the really common ribs, and then I'm going to show you a little slight difference in a stitch to make your ribbing stand out and be a little bit more crisper. But let's take a look at some of the real common ribbings that you see in most patterns. Now, ribbing is found a lot in knitting patterns. It's used for brims of hats, cuffs of sweaters, cuffs of mittens. You'll see it a lot. And what it really is just a combination of knit stitches and purl stitches in a sequence. So this one here on top for the blue is a 1-by-1 ribbing, which means we knit one, then purl one, knit one, purl one on both sides of the fabric. It produces a nice pretty 1-by-1 ribbing. You'll notice that it's a little difficult with this stitch to really see the definition of the ribbing. It kind of gets squished together a little bit. But if you like that effect, it makes for a really pretty brim or cuff for your projects. Very nice 1-by-1 ribbing. Now this is a 2-by-2 ribbing, which basically just means knit 2 stitches, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 on the front or in the round. Both of these can be worked obviously in the round as well. But let's show you a slightly different stitch you can do in your ribbing to make your rib stitches be a little bit more crisper and stand out a little bit. And that is called the twisted rib stitch. So you'll see in the sample that I did with a 1-by-1 ribbing, I did a twisted stitch for my knit, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. But you can see from the difference with this rib 1-by-1 to this one that you have a much more clear definition of the ribbing. These knit stitches kind of pop out a little bit more, so it gives a nice little alternative for your ribbing. So let's show you how to do this twisted rib stitch. I'm going to show you how to do it while working in the flat and also how to do it in the round, because they are just slightly different for both types. I'm going to start by just slipping my first stitch, and then for your purl stitches, see this row is where I'm going to be purling. I'm just going to do a normal purl stitch, so just purl as normal. But when I get to the knit stitch here that I need to do, instead of knitting this stitch through the front loop, I am going to knit it through the back loop. See how I'm inserting my needle through the back loop of the stitch and knitting it in that fashion. And that, in a sense, twists the stitch, and that's why we call it a twisted rib, because these knit stitches are, in a sense, twisted. Now I'll do a regular purl stitch, and then do that knit through the back loop again for my knit stitches, and then a purl stitch. And I will do this knit stitch sequence, knitting through the back loop, and then a purl all the way across the first row, and you'll do this for all of your right side rows or your odd number rows, and that gives it the twisted rib. So let's get to the end of this row and I'll show you how to do row 2. Okay, so we finished row 1 and produced this nice little twisted rib. Now the back side of your knitting when you're working in the flat is the wrong side, and for doing that side we need to do everything completely opposite of what we did for the front side. I'm going to slip the first stitch again. Now when I get to my purl stitch on this side is actually the knitted stitch on this side. So in order to maintain this twisted look on the right side of the fabric, I need to do a twisted stitch on this side of the fabric as well. So now I'm going to purl through the back loop. So to do that, bring your yarn to the front like you would for a normal purl stitch, but instead of inserting your needle this way through that top front strand, I'm going to kind of twist my needle and insert it through the back loop right in there and purl it in that fashion. Take it off your needle. And then for the knit stitches, I'm just going to knit them normal through the front loop. But the purl stitches, bring your yarn to the front, twist it around, purl it through the back loop. And that will provide that twisted knit stitch on the right side of the fabric. So knit as normal, but purl through the back loop. Let's just quickly finish this row, and then I'll show you how to do this in the round. Okay, so that is completing my back side, which shows just your normally rib, but see on the front side here it produces this really fun twisted rib. So how do you do that in the round? Well, actually it's more simple than knitting it flat. When you're knitting in the round, and I knitted this particular swatch using a 2x2 ribbing, just so you can see how the twisted rib looks in a 2x2. When you're knitting in the round, you always have the right side of the fabric facing you, so you never have to knit it backwards to knit the wrong side of the fabric. So for knitting this twisted rib stitch in the round, you basically just have to do that row 1 for every single round that you do. So for this one, I'm knitting 2, purling 2. I'm going to do my knit stitches through the back loop, just like we did for row 1, knitting it flat. So knit that through the back loop, knit my second knit through the back loop as well. Oops, there we go. And then just purl regular, do regular purl stitches, and then knitting through the back loop on the knit stitches. And then back to purling for 2, and knit through the back loop for 2, and we will continue in that fashion for this round and every round for knitting this stitch in the round. So you can see how that really gives a really pretty raised rib on this 2x2. Looks slightly different from this, just gives it a little bit of a twist. So I hope you incorporate this new fun twisted rib stitch in some of your ribbing patterns that you find when you're knitting. It provides just a little bit of contrast, makes those rib stitches pop out a little bit. So I hope you found this helpful. If so, please like, give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to receive notifications each week on new videos all about knitting tips and stitches and creative patterns. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy knitting.